fairy tales, really exciting adventure stories. And to round out that body of work, I was looking at other fairy tales and I came across this idea that is an oak tree, a thorn tree, like a hawthorn, and an ash all grew in the same spot. That would be like a little magical place where fairies would come from. So I started putting those leaves on my pieces and I started thinking a little bit more and more about symbolism of different natural elements.
What is up, Shaping Nation? This is Nick Torres here, and on this episode of Shaping Your Pottery, I got to interview Dawn Candy. Dawn makes some really incredible illustrative pottery that she tells stories through her pottery and through her clay. In this episode, you will learn how Dawn creates her storytelling pottery. You'll also learn about why you should be always making pottery that you are proud of, especially if you're trying to sell your pottery. And finally, you're also going to be learning about learning to take inspiration outside of pottery. And there's so much more in this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it because I know I did. I'll see you guys in there. Dawn, welcome to Shaping Your Pottery and share with me what is something you love besides making pottery?
I really love music, and I didn't really do much music as a kid, but as an adult, I'm learning how to play the piano, and I sing in part of an informal singing group as well, which is a lot of fun.
Absolutely love it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So tell me the story how you got started making pottery.
Yeah, I just kind of fell into it. So I right out of high school, I went and I did a bachelor's degree in university. And then after that, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. So I took some time off and from school. I figured I would go back to school and either do like a master's or something like that. And I actually got quite sick and had a little trouble figuring out what exactly the problem was. But a friend recommended that I took a pottery class to kind of relax, which, as we know, isn't just relaxing as you think it would be, but it's really challenging and really exciting. And it really helped divert my attention a little bit. And I fell in love with it. So I decided to change course and I moved to Red Deer, where they have a visual arts program. And I enrolled in that program here and then stayed in the city and started my business.
I love it. So tell me the story how you came up with the name Little Sister Pottery.
Oh, that starts easy. So I have four older siblings, and the five of us are all within 7 years, and we're from a really small town. So no matter where you went, me being the youngest, somebody would say, "Oh, you look like a Candy. You must be Kelly Candy's little sister, or you got to be Jay Candy's little sister." So it just kind of stuck. And I like the idea of being a little sister because I think little sisters are scrappy and they are curious and they, have to kind of fight in there and, and be part of the group.
I love that. I experienced the exact same thing because I'm literally the youngest of four myself. And like literally I'm in a small town myself and everybody would just recognize, oh, you're that person, that person. Yep. I know the
Yep.
exact feeling. So let's talk about your pottery. In one sentence, can you tell me what you make?
I make richly embellished functional pottery. So,
Perfect one sentence. That was great right there. So tell me the story how you started making the pottery that you make today.
well, I've always liked to draw, and I did a lot of drawing when I went to school. I went to school to learn about ceramics, but I did a visual arts program, so you kind of take a little bit of everything. And I realized I really love drawing. And then I wanted to combine the two. So I started drawing on my pots and trying to develop more rich surfaces and layering, and it kind of snowballed from there.
So you are inspired by the natural world, but how we interpret it through folklore, mythology, and superstition. How do these things impact the way you make your pottery?
Yeah, so they're impactful in the choice of imagery that I employ on the pot. So my previous schooling is in religious studies and philosophy. I'm not particularly religious myself, but I'm really interested in ritual and belief and how we practice our beliefs and how we embody them. And it can kind of cross over into superstition as well. And I'm interested in how we interpret the world through storytelling, how we create these stories about things. And so earlier, probably I think it was maybe 2013, somewhere in there, I made a series of work that was based on stories that my great grandmother told my mom growing up. Fairy tales, really exciting adventure stories. And to round out that body of work, I was looking at other fairy tales and I came across this idea that is an oak tree, a thorn tree, like a hawthorn, and an ash all grew in the same spot. That would be like a little magical place where fairies would come from. So I started putting those leaves on my pieces And I started thinking a little bit more and more about symbolism of different natural elements, leaves, birds. I like birds a lot because they're these kind of messengers between the sky and the land. And I'm interested in ambiguity and borders crossing over between different areas. So it's just it's nothing that somebody has to know about, I think, to appreciate the work, but it's something that I think about when I'm thinking about what I'd like to depict.
I love that. Shape Nation, if you have like a little bit of a meaning behind your pottery, or like what you think the meaning is, it can make it a little bit easier to actually make the pottery and come up with new ideas as well. I love that as well. So, your illustrations have a unique kind of design to them. What would you call the illustrations that you make on your pottery?
I don't really have a name for it. I just layer a lot of different techniques. So I use inlaying. I mean, some people call it mishima. I use that technique a lot. I use flip trailing. I use squeeze bottle to trail underglaze to get fine lines. I brush underglaze or slip, and I use low fire commercial glaze. I just honestly, I combine a whole bunch of different techniques to try to create a feeling of depth in the surface. So I should come up with a name for it, but I haven't.
What made you start using a variety of different techniques for this?
I had a really great drawing instructor when I was a student, and he talked a lot about line variety and embedding information. So we did a lot of figure drawing with a model, which I loved, but he was really encouraging us, embed your own interest and your own thoughts into these drawings as well as just drawing that model. So I would do a lot of geometric patterns on my paper before I would get to class. So that I would cover it all in charcoal and erase away to show some of the patterns with pencil crayons and just tried mixing a bunch of media on the page while I was drawing the model. And I carried that over into working in clay. I think that all of the rules that we have for drawing are the same that we should have for drawing on clay. But clay, a soft material that you can carve into and that you can create rings texture on, gives even more added possibilities for creating depth within the picture plane on the surface of the clay.
So, I want to come back to your time at your college. How did attending and learning more about art in like college, how did that help your own pottery?
It really formed it. I mean, I didn't make much pottery to speak of before I went. I got really excited about it, taking a couple of classes, and I was in a really small town, and they didn't have a lot of instructors, so you could join their guild and sign out for the place for like $35 a year. It was really crazy. It was like nobody will ever have that opportunity, but it was so cheap. But at the same time, and you had 24 access to the studio, 24-hour a day, 7 days a week. You just go in there. So I lived there, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I was before anybody was putting out videos and, kind of doing tutorials. So I was trying to teach myself how to throw from a book. And it just wasn't going all that well. And pestering everybody that was there, and they finally said, you need to go and actually take a course and really embed yourself in this. So that's what I did. And because it is a full visual art program, they do require that you take drawing every semester, pick two concentrations. And the other one that I chose was printmaking. And I think that also probably is evident in the type of surface design that I do because it's a lot of similar techniques. Yeah, I didn't have a line of pottery before I went, but all of those techniques and just design, right? Like design is design, composition is composition. It doesn't really matter what media you're working in. All of that background knowledge, I think, really helps to design pots that I hope are pleasing and also.
So, what is something you learned from your time during this time that help that you still use today or helped you with your own pottery?
I'm going to go back to layering different techniques. I love it when I see a pot that has a one type of technique done really, really well, like a beautifully inlaid surface on a pot. But I get really excited when I see a surface and I have to really kind of think through it. "Oh, wait, how do they do that? Like it feels really cohesive and really natural, and I have to kind of worm my way into what methods they use to create it, and then kind of think like reverse engineer what would they have done first. And because my mind works that way, that's how I like to make my pots. I want them to have that rich surface that feel really cohesive, like it's all kind of melded together, but that it has separate components to create a layer of richness. And I think that really came through from my drawing and from my ceramics instructor as well. She was really encouraging that you have to remember all of the things that you learn in your other classes when you go to draw on a pot, because sometimes people just forget and all of their lines are exactly the same. And then all of their brush strokes are really boring. You just really need to think, I'm still painting, I'm still drawing, I'm just doing it in a different medium.
I love that. Shape Nation, if you have experience in other art forms or other things, you can apply that to your own pottery and make some really amazing looking pottery. I love that so much. So now, can you walk me through how you create your illustrations onto your pottery?
Yeah, everything starts with a pencil. I do most of my work bone dry, so which is really convenient. I used to try to do everything at a leather hard stage, and it's tough, right, to kind of get to pots at the right stage. And I was in a really, really dry climate, so I was doing crazy things like putting in plastic containers with plaster and trying to keep things at the stage that we normally think about doing research design at. And I started doing more work right on the bone dry clay because I sometimes wouldn't get to it in time. And that gives you an opportunity to draw with a pencil and not worry about making marks or carving into the surface or anything like that. So I always draw, well, not always draw, but I typically draw with a pencil, lightly my design on the bone dry piece. And then I just work with a spray bottle and a tool to carve lines. I use a spray bottle and a slip trailer to actually lay lines on top of the pot as well. As long as I'm spraying in between, it still adheres really well. I don't have to worry too much about that. And then I do a lot of stains. So I'll water down underglazes. I used to actually make my own stains, but now I like to keep my arsenal of products as minimal as I can. So I use underglazes a lot now because they're so versatile. So I'll usually water down underglazes, I'll do stains and wash it back, and I'll do brush strokes, and then I use a sleeve bottle and I trail more lines. It's pretty time consuming, but I like the effect that I'm getting with the amount of layering that I'm doing.
I love that. So let's talk about the business side of pottery. Can you tell me about the moment when you decided to go full time with your pottery?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't think I had a moment. I think it kind of gradually happened. I was really lucky. Like after I left school, one of my instructors and his partner have a visual arts business. They're both ceramic artists, and they needed somebody to help work in their studio. So I worked in their studio part time. I worked retail part time for quite a while, and then I started to get classes. I was offered the opportunity to teach for the city of Red Deer, teach some recreational pottery and drawing classes. So I was doing that and kind of just adding more and more gig work, like contract work, to the point where it became full time. So I didn't have to do the retail work anymore. And then at the same time, I was building my skills as a potter and making work that I wanted to sell eventually. And once that work started to sell, I could, okay, I'm not going to teach 9 classes a week. I'm going to teach 7 classes a week. And I'm not, you know what I mean? I kind of just dropped it back really gradually. I didn't have a particular moment where I knew that this was sustain myself on. But it seems to be working so far. I'm knocking on.
So, what would you say was your biggest obstacle when you went full time?
Yeah, I think I think having the belief that it's sustainable. Like it's really difficult to know. I mean, when you have a job that you're paid for, hourly or however that works, you can kind of calculate forward how much money you're going to be making like next year or the year after that. And I think mentally it was really difficult for me to let go. I'm only teaching 2 or 3 classes a week now, so it's just sort of supplemental. And I mostly do it just because I really love it. The money is nice too, but I really do like teaching. And dropping those classes back down to the point and, not working part-time for my friend's studio anymore, having that belief that I don't need that as a safety net, that was really challenging. And sometimes it still is. I mean, you still kind of think, am I going to make the same amount of money next year as I did this year? Like, it's harder to plan, I think. That was my big obstacle with mental.
So, if you could go back
I,
to when you were first going full time, what is something that you would do different to help you have more success?
I, I think I would be better at documenting things, just keeping really good notes. I used to be pretty good about keeping a sketchbook, and I still how to sketchbook for ideas. But I used to be a little bit better about keeping track of things that I did that didn't work out. And I wish I had been even better at that because I tend to repeat some mistakes because I'm very process driven. I'll think, well, what if I did this particular technique before this other technique instead of after it? Let me try that and see how it turns out. And then I get excited about it. So I'll do, like half a tone lobe like that. And then it'll come out and I'll go, oh yeah, I did that before. And it was bad then. And it's bad now. So I think record keeping.
I love that. So, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to make their first 10 sales with their own pottery?
I think, well, making work that you like. I don't think looking at a market and trying to figure out what our market wants is the best way. Like following trends, that kind of thing. I don't think, I'm sure there are people that are successful doing that, but I'm not sure that that would be advice I would give. I think you have to make work that really excites you. And then that excitement shows through the work to potential buyers. And I think you have to put the time in to make work that you're really proud of before you jump the gun and start selling. If you are able to. I mean, not everybody is able to do that, but if you can really put the time in and you're super, super proud of the work, it should be the best work that you can make at any given time. And sure, 10 years from now, your work might be way better in your opinion, but still, every time you sell something, you really should be very, very proud of it.
I love that advice. Shaping Nation, the most important things are to one, to make sure that you are having work that you are enjoying that you're making. And then number two is always putting your best foot forward with your work, making sure it's the best possible piece of pottery that you can make. I love that. So let's talk about discovering your voice. Can you tell me about the moment when you knew you were heading in the right direction with your pottery?
Yeah, I think it comes down to excitement again as well. I don't know again that I have a specific moment that I can look back and say, oh, that's when I knew that I was feeling good specifically about what I'm making. I think there's always an element of kind of chasing what you're making. Like you're always kind of thinking, what else can I do? How can I change this? How can I grow? I think that when you have a level of excitement that you can't wait to get back into the studio, I think that is a really good indication that you're on a good.
Definitely agree. That's a very good indicator. So you contribute growth as an artist to being able to support yourself in other work so you could find your voice without having to worry about selling your work. Can you tell me more about this?
Yeah. I was really lucky. I had that kind of gig work that I could pare down really gradually. I didn't have to take a moment and say, I'm gonna quit my full-time job and immediately start making pots and support myself. I know not everybody has that luxury of being able to kind of pare their work down gradually. But for me, it was really important because I had the opportunity to find the work that I was excited about before I started to rely on it for an income. And I think if you are relying on pots really early, you're going to be driven more by the market and what any particular market is really excited about than you are about what you're excited about.
Definitely agree. That is some excellent advice right there. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to discover their own unique voice with their pottery?
Say look outside pottery for influencers is one thing. I think it's good to look at other people's work. And I think it's good to look at other people's work with a critical eye and try to figure out, that whole thing of like, how did you do that? And maybe even try it yourself to get a sense of it and to get a real feel for technique. But I think when you're looking for to find your own voice, it can be really difficult right now. I think we're flooded with images of other people's work. And it can be really difficult to step outside of that. And you might see something that you're very excited about, but you don't know how to make it your own. And so giving yourself some breaks from constantly looking at other people's work, I think is really important. And thinking about other areas, like look at furniture design. Think about like a piece of furniture you really love the design of and think about that. Like what kinds do you like things with lots of right angles? Do you like things that are really curvy? Just really basic questions like that. Because design is design. Look at all kinds of things outside of pottery. I think I saw that you had put up a post about isolating. If you like somebody's piece, isolating what it is that you like about it. I thought that was really good advice. Isolate that and kind of springboard from that, and your own voice will shine through eventually instead of replicating somebody's work and then going, oh, I like that other person's work, and then replicating their work and then replicating somebody else's work. that's all really good for skill building. But if you're wanting to really figure out what makes you super excited, I think being a little bit more critical about what you're doing in the studio in that respect is useful. Really analyze what it is specifically about something that excites you and then figure out how you can do that yourself without strictly replicating somebody else's piece.
Absolutely agree. Shaping Nation, look into other people's work, but find what you like about people's work. Don't just copy it straight up. Find what you like and then try to model that and work with that and keep pursuing those things that you like. I absolutely love that. So, as we are coming to a close here today, what is one thing you want to hammer home with my audience today?
I think on process is, and this is just my own personal advice because this is what I think gets me excited and keeps me really engaged, is thinking about the process and staying really curious about it. Like really trying to stay open and not shutting yourself into a box. Like I made this type of work and this is the type of work that I'm going to make for the next 10 years. I think it's important to give yourself that opportunity to explore. So my instructor, I'm talking a lot about my instructors, but you have me kind of thinking a lot about the trajectory of how I got to where I'm making the pots that I'm making now. I had an instructor who said that whenever she fires a kiln, she does an experiment in it. And that's a lot. Like if you do that with every kiln, that is a ton expectation for yourself. But I think trying to keep that in mind, and if you have a thought while you're making something, like what if I did this a little bit differently? Let yourself do that. Like that's genuinely, I think, my best advice. When I'm in the middle of a big making spree and I'm putting a bunch of coffees on a bunch of mugs, which I love doing, but eventually my mind will start to kind of wander. I'm the type of person that gets a little bit creative while I'm working. It's not so much isolated where I sit down with a sketchbook and think of an idea and draw it. I think of things while I'm actually working. And I find if I write it down and think I'm going to come back to it later, I don't always. So if I can, unless I'm really, really under the gun, if I can, I will take the opportunity to actually try the thing that popped into my mind because I think it's important to stay open and to stay curious and just to try everything you can think of because you never know. It might be something that really revolutionizes your work.
Definitely agree. Some excellent parting words, advice. Dawn, where can my audience go and learn more about you?
I have a website. It's www.littlesister.ca. I'm Canadian. And I do have an Instagram page as well.